Hello, George Orwell was born on this day in 1903, well known for his books Animal Farm and 1984. But quite a theme of his writings was social class. Uh, he described himself as coming from a middle, lower, upper class background. And indeed, he did start off growing up in Suffolk from what you might call an ordinary middle class home, but he was educated at Eton as well as in other schools, which I think would put him into the upper class category. But he also wanted to experience what it was like to be a member of the working class. And so in London, for example, he went to live in Limehouse, which at that time was very much a working class area. And indeed, for part of his time there, he changed his name, clothed himself like a tramp, and lived rough, trying to experience what that kind of life was like. And he did the same in Paris, and so, of course, led to the title of one of his books, Down and Out in Paris and London. This attempt to become working class, when in fact his background was very middle stroke upper class, was only very partially successful. He did enable him to write with some feeling about people that he knew from that kind of background, but he himself was not comfortable at all in that company, really. And the story goes that one day when his brother-in-law took him into a Leeds pub, as they left, the landlord said to the brother-in-law, "Don't bring that bugger in here again." Clearly he had just not fitted in at all to the clientele of that particular pub. And indeed I think we are who we are. We're made up, many of us, of maybe the influence of one class, and I speak unashamedly, I think, as a middle class person, both in education, in background, in wealth and in profession. So I can't really speak for people whose background is from more than one class, perhaps if parents are from a different class, or people feel they've moved from the class that they grew up in to a different class because of the way they were educated, or because of the job they chose. It's a very complicated but very interesting topic. And one of the things that I find fascinating is that, generally speaking, when we're talking to somebody who's not of the same kind of background or intellectual ability or financial situation as we are aware of that difference. And sometimes we try to avoid that kind of interaction because we're much more comfortable with people who are like us. But I think that landlord in that pub might well have benefited from trying to get to know George Orwell, because George Orwell obviously wanted to get to know him. He might have benefited by discovering a different way of looking at the world, if you come from a different kind of background. And I think there are quite marked differences sometimes depending on as I say, our intellectual ability, our wealth, our social upbringing. And so today I think I want to be reminded that I have a background and you will have yours, and to be proud of it, that it's made me, help to form me and to help to make me who I am, but also to be aware of how much there is to learn, as George Orwell tried to do, about people coming from a very different background, of a very different class, but people who may have just as much to contribute to my life as people who are just like me.